Herzlich willkommen, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for our live stream in Hesse Crisis Talks. The Crisis Talk here in the representation of Hesse are organized by the Leibniz Verbund in the word crisis in globalized world. And we will talk about the political decision for the long term. And this, ladies and gentlemen, couldn't have been chosen better, because we discussed since yesterday at a European level about the climate goals for 2030. All the representatives of the European member states and also obviously the politicians are discussing everything with the Commission, the Parliament, and this will obviously be very important when everybody will meet here in Brussels on Saturday, and we will have also the climate seal presented by Mrs. Merkel. And it's really about a very important decisions that have to be made right now. And we are very happy to have Professor Dr. Mosbrugger, paleontologist here from the Senckenberg Museum in Frankfurt, one of the most important voices in Europe. He is an expert for biological diversity, and obviously we also have Michael Bloss and Mr. Schuster from the DG Climate. You can send us a mail for your questions, streamline at lv-brussels.hessen.de. You can see it on the screen. Or 0032 472 030181. And now, from the representation in Hesse in Brussels, I welcome Mr. Weinmeister, our minister. Thank you very much for welcoming me, and I would love to be in Brussels today. It's true, but we also know what is happening, and the topic is very interesting, and we have interesting panel with Mrs. Deitelhoff, who together with us is organizing this event like all the others, and Mr. Mosbrugger, that I have seen him personally. It's very nice to have him here. Thank you for being here, Mr. Mosbrugger. And then Mr. Schuster, we are talking about climate protection and how can we get in the future to a point that we get a balance that we can leave to our children and grandchildren, giving them the opportunity to work and live in an intact world. which is very important for us at the representation of Hesse, because we have a climate protection plan for us. We have a lot of initiatives that has been initiated, and then to be more efficient and to save, obviously, also energy, to reduce also the climate gases. And we are looking at 2030, and we are looking to Brussels. What is happening here, what you already said, what is our climate goal for 2030 is obviously very important for us as a region in Germany, because with these measures we want to work together with the Commission and the member states. On the other hand, we do know that we have to take the citizens with us, because it's not useful if we try to have a balance on the one hand in between ecological topics and economy, because I guess then people might not understand it and not follow us. We would like to talk about neutrality and the fact that we are open for these topics, and already did this in many places. The European Prime Minister, the basis of what has been decided more or less a year ago. We are very happy that this can be seen and is discussed. We have obviously the agricultural policy, but also the question of biodiversity, climate neutrality, the energy system. All this is part of it, and I'm very happy and looking forward to the discussion today, because I think it will be very interesting. Thank you very much, and thank you for the panelists for being with us today. Obviously, I would have loved to see you all personally, but I'm optimistic. It will be like this sooner or later. Thank you very much, Mr. Weinmeister, and therefore the best wishes to you in your office. And I would love to see Mrs. Deitelhoff here live for peace and conflict research. She is part of the Leibniz Institute for Crisis in a Globalized World, and she has made everything to have this event today happening. And now, Mrs. Deitelhoff, you have the floor. In a crisis year like 2020, give you an introduction. It seems that we are staggering from one crisis to the other. Today, we do have a central topic, the climate crisis, and I guess we can see how the crises are locked one to the other. The corona crisis is obviously a crisis for different parts of our life, but we also have the opportunities with one of the biggest challenges to get ahead with the climate crisis. The corona pandemic asks us to see how we want to shape our future in the economy, in the society, how we will tackle with all this, and using everything in order to have a package for our climate. If we want to tackle the climate crisis, we do need a sustainable decision processes. And I'm very happy that we have a so important panel today where we can talk about these points, and therefore I'm looking forward to a very interesting discussion and asking ourselves, how can we manage with the climate change? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Deitelhoff from the Leibniz Institute, Hessische Stiftung Friedens- und Konfliktforschung. And I'm curious to see if our panelist is wearing a tie, because he hopes for less occasions where you need to wear a tie, taking your bicycle in order to go to your job. And we will now discuss about the crisis in the biodiversity, of the loss of biodiversity. The general director of the Senckenberg Society for Research in Frankfurt, Professor Mosbrugger. A lot of colleagues were asking who will be speaking today, and I said, I have the impression that to meet Goethe, very important scientist. He is your paleontologist and biologist. You're interested in physics, philosophy, and obviously he is sharing his insights. And therefore, I'm very happy that you today are here with us. Please, you have the floor. Thank you very much for this introduction. And we will say, if I really can tackle with what you said, and I'm really prepared to take my bicycle, and I left my tie at home, as you rightly said. Now I have the pleasure to give you the first insight, and we might start with the first picture, because I would like even go further than what we have in our title, the climate crisis. I would like to make you understand that it's not so much the climate, it is the system of the human being, and this system is in the crisis. So please, would you show me the first slide? And therefore, I said the human Earth system in the crisis, because I would make clear that the topic we are talking about, we need to talk about, it is not only climate, it's much bigger than this. Next slide. I will start with a positive point. If you have a look at statistics, you can also read it in books. Humanity is living today better than ever before. On the left side, you have the historical development of human beings starting from 1870. And then we go up to 2020. And the different lines show the development of the human life in these years in different countries. And wherever you look, things are getting better. And with all the parameters, human beings are really living well, never better before. And this, even if we have become so many, you have the development of humanity. You can see it on the left side. It's hard to see it for me here. Somewhere in the 19th century, and there where we have the flags, that's in the 1950s. I'm born in 1953. We were 2.5 billion people. Today, we are more or less 8 billion people. This means that what we see on the left for well-being is related also with a strong increase. We have 3 times what we of people what we had before, and this can also be negative, even if human beings are living as well as they can or better than ever before. And we have also the other side, but there are a lot of challenges of the environment, and all this is related to the fact that we overuse nature, the use of land, the loss of biodiversity, obviously acid waters in the oceans, and at the end, the pandemic. All these topics are related to the fact that we use nature too much. The tragedy of the commons. Nature doesn't cost anything, so therefore we use it. Now, the next slide, please. And with some pictures, I would show you the drama of the situation. On the left hand, we have the development of CO2 since from the 50s, and we shouldn't look too much at the numbers, but since 60, 70 years, we have CO2 rising every day, and this is increasing also in the atmosphere, even if we had, I don't know how many of conferences to work against it. You don't see the Kyoto Protocol, you don't see Copenhagen, you don't see anything about the Paris Agreement. So even if they did what they could, CO2 is rising, and we have 1 degree more. In some cases, it's more. And on the right hand, we have another phenomenon that is even more critical than rising temperatures, is the rise of the oceans, because also the oceans are rising continuously.
This makes us think that during the next 80, 90 years to come, many people will lose their home. The most recent studies, the most recent figures show that 190 up to 360 million of people will have to move due to the global average sea level change, and 360 million would be the worst case scenario, but even 190 million, which is the best case scenario, is horrific. It's very personal or very dramatic personal stories. Then land use. We are destroying nature as never before. Even today, we use about 4.7 million hectares of land per year. It's for urbanization, infrastructure, agriculture, airports. It's about the size of the Netherlands. We are taking each year the size of the Netherlands from nature in order to construct, to build something. Then the loss of biodiversity. We have the International Climate Council, but we now have also the International Biodiversity Council. And this institution is investigating on the biodiversity. And we have a few informations. The extinction rate is up to 10 to 1,000 times higher than before. About 1 million species are threatened with extinction, and this biodiversity loss would lead to about 3 trillion US dollar of annual losses. If we look on the bottom at the left-hand side, there we have a very terrific example of how fast biodiversity is being lost. Looking here at Germany. We have been investigating on 1 decade between 2008 and 2017. Now we have been looking at the diminution or the dwindling of anthropod habitat. And there we see that grassland and forest show a diminution, decline in the species richness of 34, respectively 36% over only 10 years, in only 1 decade. Here we have the last 3 environmental challenges we are facing. We have the ocean acidification, which of course is due to the increase of CO2 in our atmosphere. We see here the coral reefs are suffering from it. Then we have the bleaching due to the temperature increase and to the acidification. And here we see how much pollution we have in our environment. It's very dangerous. It's even dangerous to live in numerous cities due to the very bad air and bad water quality. And if we take a look at the pandemics are getting much more important. We must admit that Corona is also due to our negative impact on the environment, because we are overusing nature more and more. So the spreading of contaminants is much more important. Next slide, please. So what would we need? We would need a solution tackling every single problem. And this is what we call mitigation and adaptation. Okay, we have the rather short-term challenges, air pollution, climate change, and so on. But we also need a change, a systemic change, a paradigm change. Without that kind of change, without that kind of a new approach, we will not be able to tackle the overuse of nature. And what would be that kind of long-term solution? There, sustainability is the keyword. So sustainability meaning that something can survive, can last in the future. One says that a society, an economic system is sustainable if it guarantees prosperity, so the economic level, but also if it handles the social issues and the environmental issues. Okay, we need all three of them. And if we look at the last 70 years, we see that we reached social market economy, which is to the benefit of prosperity and the people, but which leaves the planet, the environment, really outside. But now we see that our use of resources has increased in such a way that it becomes dangerous for the planet. Now the challenge will be to find a social market economy thriving for a balance between prosperity, people, and planet. And what would be the goal? We would like to integrate the planet into prosperity and people, and we must avoid to continue destroying our natural capital, our nature. Our planet is our only real resource, since everything else is based on our natural capital. Without nature, without our planet, there wouldn't be life. So we have to launch a development where we don't reduce our nature and natural capital anymore. To this order, we need 3 points. We need to show the impacts prosperity has on the planet and on people. So in my financial balances, I also have to take people and planet into consideration. This is the first point that would show which companies are working in a sustainable way. Then, second point, the external costs, so the negative impact on our environment we have since we use our environment, we have to show, to indicate these costs, and we have to internalize them. And then I have to use this added value in order to improve our nature. Water is a good way. We pay for the water we use, and we pay for the water that has to be cleaned. Yeah? And the same principle should apply to all other natural resources. And next slide, please. Then I have to think, if I reach in maintaining my natural resources, what would be growth? And my growth will then be limited to my efficiency in using the natural resources without destroying them. So my growth is limited. And now my last slide before I finish. I am really convinced that there is something like a green growth. Yes. If we increase our efficiency of the use of natural capital, then we can have green growth. And I believe that the transition towards an ecological, social market economy will need mitigation, will need a systemic change, but we still have to improve and really tackle this systemic change in a serious way. Thank you. Thank you very much for this keynote speech. Now I would like to present our panelists to whom you can send your questions. We have Michael Bloss, is member of the European Parliament, and Michael Bloss has spent some time in Africa, where he did his civil service. He has been studying at the University Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. He studied international relations in Leipzig and in Wien, and he is member of the European Parliament since 2019. And we know him as a very engaged person in order to reduce the CO2 emissions against the framework of the Paris Agreement. Okay, a warm welcome to you. Then I would like to present Niels Schuster, who is also in our representation of the state of Hessen. You are pro-European in favor of the European Young Federalists. You are expert at European law. You are a lawyer. You're working at the Director General for Climate. So Niels Schuster is somebody who is aware of the climate topic on international level, who has been negotiating climate aspects in Iran, who has been participating in the negotiations to the Paris Agreement. And he is now an expert on the Green Deal, if I may say so. First of all, after the explanation of Professor Dr. Mosbrugger, we are currently negotiating the CO2 emissions, and we really have to fix a target rapidly. What is the current status? Can we be optimistic? Should we be afraid? Thank you very much for your invitation, and thank you very much for this presentation, for this keynote speech, Professor Dr. Mosbrugger. Very exciting, very interesting. And the situation, the tragic situation we are in currently, because we are aware of the problem for about 30 years now. We know that we are heading towards these catastrophes, towards this crisis, and the longer we await to act, the more difficult it will become. Yesterday took place the first trilogue, and we don't have the council position yet, the position of the EU member states. The parliament put a reduction by 60% on the table, and now the member states have to wait. Head of states, head of government have to discuss, and then the ministers for environmental Affairs will fix their position on the 17th of December. And Angela Merkel would like to announce the EU climate target. And the European Democratic Institution takes place via the Council representatives and the European Parliament. And it's in our hands to fix this climate target. Okay? Okay, so according to you, you are really asking a clear reduction. Okay, there is an opposition, Poland, Czech Republic, and so on. They say no, not with us. Do you think that there could a blocking from these countries?
It's not easy because the block is coming also from the situation that we are talking also about the household, about the budget, and that the climate goals might be reduced. Those who want a little bit less ambition are not only in the eastern part of Europe. We can find them also in at the PPE group because they say 55% that have been proposed are too much. And I guess we have already seen that right now we have to tackle the goal. We can't wait even 5 more years. This has very high costs. We lose a lot of biodiversity. We have damages due to the climate crisis. It's something we have to pay for. And this is not good for the economy, but also not for the planet. We destroy everything. And you are participating also in these discussions. It's a difficult situation. We have countries like Hungary and Poland that are blocking the household and therefore also the means and the money that we need for the reduction of CO2. For example, if we get out of coal in a country like Poland, for example, and therefore it seems as there can't be an agreement, at least not on something ambitious like 80%, as Mrs. Merkel said, or 60% that the parliament was asking for. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here at Hesse with the Senckenberg Gesellschaft and the state of law in the different states is not very lucky, but I have to say that Poland and other countries are not only the only ones that want to stop. Now, these countries have advanced. They said yes to climate neutrality until 2050, but Poland came back in later on, and Hungary got even further. And there we have to we have many countries, they have done a lot, they have steps with climate neutrality, and probably they did even more. Now we have to see, I'm quite optimistic that on the 11th of December we might find during the summit a good solution. And obviously we will talk further about budget and state of rule of law. I guess these countries needed still to exchange, and this happened during the last weeks, and there were also statements. Everybody tried to explain what will happen, but that's not finished yet. But I'm quite optimistic that we will find an agreement during this summit. And then we might see how this will continue in Parliament. Professor Mosbrugger, if I see the percentages, 55% of reduction, Mr. Niels Schuster is talking about 55%. You, as a scientist, what are you thinking about this discussion? Do you have your own position, or do you say it's not really the most important point if it is now 50, 55 or 60? This is not what I'm concentrating on. From my point of view, these are the very important questions. How much do we want to invest in this future development and in this protection? And like Mr. Bloss said, the earlier we start, if we talk about climate, if we start reducing CO2, that's the best thing we can do. The storage is there. We have a lot of what we already sent into the atmosphere as CO2. And now we have to be really drastically reducing this. But we can't only work on the fine-tuning, like how can I have an economic without CO2? I have to work on the whole system. And I guess in these technical discussions, how can I improve things like mitigation? And I have not to forget that I have to adapt as far as topics are concerned that we have to tackle with, but I have to work also on the system. You know, we shouldn't forget Europe is only a small part of what is happening in the whole world. We are almost 8 billion people, and from these people, if we have Europe as climate neutral, we didn't solve the problem in the whole. Europe is obviously central and important because we also have the technologies, but we have to work at a global field, at a global level to have a system. Thank you very much, Professor Mosbrugger. I know, Mr. Bloss, you have another appointment, another data. And they say, yeah, 55% we reduce CO2, that's perfect. But is this something that might then hinder job creation or lead to a loss of jobs? So we have no industry in the European Union, then they go to India where they can work as they want. You, as a MEP, are you talking with the critics? Are you going to the different industries, coal and steel, where we have this big topic of CO2? You said hello to Stuttgart. I'm coming from a region that has to tackle with this transformation, but the answer can't be we will wait with our old technologies. The answer is, can we change this technology in order to enter the future market? And this has to be a logic. If we see the whole world wants to exit the CO2 topic, this was in Paris. So who are the first who develop these technologies that we need and bring them on the market? And this is what is important also for the economy, because this has to be something profitable for the economy. And if we invest in these technologies on the long term, they are low price. And nowadays, some things are already much cheaper than coal or gas. And this is the right direction. And if I have a look at that, we do have a lot of jobs involved. In Eastern Europe, as the Commission already said, when we have the opportunity to isolate the houses. These are a lot of jobs for the SMEs. So we will have more work than we have nowadays with our industry. Obviously, this has to be backed by the politicians, and we have also to define how we will reach our goal. And I guess we shouldn't anyhow be afraid to lose a lot of jobs. Thank you very much, Mr. Bloss, for the time you dedicated in this discussion. And I hope you have a good day. And I'm talking now with Mr. Schuster. Mrs. von der Leyen started a year ago, and one of the first announcements was the Green Deal, and she talked about something that was remembered a little bit the landing on the moon, but we seem to be stuck on Earth. And I think this is a very nice picture, landing on the moon, and also the system change, the systemic change that Mr. Mosbrugger was mentioning. The Green Deal is not perfect, but I think we have a change in it. We have to consider, we have seen this also, we were using fossil fuels for 200 years, and we want to change all this in 30 years. So probably people didn't understand everything until the middle of this of 2050. We don't want to have any CO2. We might work with hydrogen, and this is only a small part of the whole project. The second part is that the Green Deal has the intention. We are not only looking at the single strategies like hydrogen strategies, but we are looking, he is looking especially what is happening with biodiversity. What do we do about, because we want to plant 3 billion of trees, and we are looking very closely how to protect other countries, and how can we stop the loss of biodiversity. We have different strategies in order to adapt to the climate. We have now also the from farm to fork action. All this is part of the Green Deal, even if it is not perfect. But these are the goals we have, and therefore if you talk about landing on the moon, you are right. And I have to say, we will hear a lot about this in the next few months. We will talk about numbers, but until June or July, we will have concrete measures from the side of the Commission, what this means, if we can really tackle with the goals we fixed for us. Well, I have now a question from Mr. Geisler. Do we enough against the dying of honeybees? And I know this is a topic very important for Professor Mosbrugger. Yes, indeed, it's very important for me, because it is really a dramatic development, and therefore we have a lot of initiatives, but we need more time. It's not helpful if we start with action to go ahead with a development where we can't have the result we would like to see. Obviously, it's agriculture that very often leads to the death of insects. 50% of our land is used for agriculture, and therefore we know where the problem is coming from, and it is pesticides or chemicals that lead to the dying of bees. And therefore, the agricultural system should be changed in the next future. And there we come back to the European Union, because we haven't seen the results we would have seen in the discussions. And I'm talking about Germany. the different ministries in Germany are very much engaged to do something also about bees, and I'm coordinating kinds of these groups where we also fight for biodiversity to maintain biodiversity. Professor Mosbrugger, with your numbers, you have seen that between 100 to 150 species are dying every day. And many people say, oh, there are so many of them. That's not so dramatic. Oh, thank you very much. I just would like to explain it. Every species has something to do in the whole system. And if we lose a species, then we lose a function in the system. And therefore, we have this ecological system. If we lose these animals, then people are losing something like pollination. Or imagine you have less organisms in in the earth, which obviously influences the plants. Or look at the mountains. We have many more earth slides, and this has to do with the whole system. These things and these services are important for us. And what is happening today is something that I see like somebody who doesn't know anything about techniques, but starts to pick single pieces from the engine, then a little thing, and sooner or later the car will not functioning. We do not know what it means if we lose species like this.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Professor Dr. Martin Hein. Kassel has decided to become climate neutral by 2030. Very ambitious goal. How will the EU or the Parliament support this kind of local initiatives? Michael Bloss had to leave. He had another meeting, but now the question to Niels Schuster. How will the EU support this kind of local initiatives? Yes, I just would like to highlight that the Commission aims at being climate neutral by 2032. Kassel, the city Kassel, we have the majors, the Covenant of Mayors at the European level, where cities and municipalities from Germany, from Europe, and from third countries can introduce this kind of project and get some funds. Then there are other kinds of fundings for renewable energies, loading stations for e-vehicles, and so on. But this convent of majors, I would to highlight that we have our climate pact on 16th of December. There we will try to integrate the whole society, the industry, citizens, and so on. And therefore, we'll have a kickoff event on the 16th of December. Thank you very much. Our audience is very expert level. Professor Dr. Maurer is asking the following questions. What changes are necessary in the international trade in order to organize this systemic change? Okay. Niels Schuster, you have been traveling at international level, negotiating at international level. What would be the core point that needs to change? okay, we really need a greener trade system, and the Commission has made a few steps. We have sustainable development chapters in our different trade instruments to make sure that the states and nations respect their obligations. Then there are reflections regarding the Paris Agreement, which means making it an essential instrument. There we have to wait how things will continue. Then we can say that not everything has to be bought internationally. We can buy many things at a local level. So free trade is a nice thing, but we really should think about everything that can be purchased at local level. Yeah. Professor Dr. Mosbrugger, your reaction regarding the internalization of natural costs, which you mentioned. From your point of view, what would be the necessary change at trade level to reach to the climate objectives? This is the key. We have our overshoot day. This is the day of the year when we start overusing our Earth. Okay, so we only have one planet, but we use 1.5 planets every year. What does this mean? We import nature from poorer countries. Okay, we have nature protection acts and so on. And we protect our nature, meaning that the negative impact is taking place at other parts of the world. And therefore, we have to oblige our companies, our multinationals, to take into account the supply chains. So, and the Act on Supply Chains is a very useful instrument. A company has to examine its supply chains and to make sure that this supply chain is working in a sustainable way. And then we have the consumer chain. We have to make sure that consumers also pay for the negative impact on nature they provoke. Now, when I'm talking about the Green Deal of the Commission with the different people, they say, okay, very nice. They meet Greta Thunberg, very nice. But when will they come to visit us, to our industry? When will they tell us what the Green Deal needs or means for our industry? This is actually taking place. Mr. Timmermans, Vice President of the current Commission, is traveling a lot, even if it's not that easy in a pandemic. But it's a very real concrete dialogue with the steel producers regarding the switch to hydrogen. And in Germany, we are saying in the medium and in the long run, steel can be produced using hydrogen. And of course, we must not abandon our workers. And I'm not only thinking about the steel industry, but also regarding the coal industry. There will be many changes regarding the job situation. We will also get new jobs, and this is the positive impact. But of course, there will be countries, there will be companies that will suffer from the change. And of course, there we have to support to organize a fair transition to make sure that nobody is abandoned. Because if we don't reach a transition for everybody, there will be no transition at all. You have been participating in the Paris negotiation. I don't know if you had direct contact with John Kerry. He is the climate office of Joe Biden for the next presidency, US presidency. And the Commission has also sent the signal that we want to increase a cooperation with the United States. So yeah, I have not been participating directly in the negotiation of the Paris Agreement, but I have been negotiating the implementation rules. And the day when Trump was elected, I was on my way to Marrakesh to the conference, and there were very negative, very discouraging reactions, but who also that also showed that the international community is working together, and this is really the result of our efforts. We now have a president working on the climate. So on the one hand, we have the EU Green Deal, and then I hope we will have the, let's say, New Deal from the US. And this will make progress possible at a historical level. And if we take a look at China, there's no climate neutrality, but at least a CO2 neutrality. So we have Canada, we have Japan, we have many more countries who join us in our efforts. And so I'm very optimistic that this will really make a quantic change possible. Professor Dr. Mosbrugger, you are also giving lots of speeches and lectures in the US. What is your opinion of the new president regarding climate protection and protection of the biodiversity? I'm not too optimistic because the country, the US, are very divided, and we don't know yet what will be a balance between both parties in the Senate. So, of course, there is a political will to do something, but what will be possible in the end, we don't know yet. Okay, you have also been talking about the connection between corona pandemic and environmental change, like nature and mankind are more and more interfering. If now we take a look at corona, do you think that the economic impact of corona is so important that the climate will be or come in a second place only? It's very difficult to evaluate. Okay, we hear very often that this is a one in a lifetime chance. We invest lots of means currently. And now the question is, how can we use these funds right now? And we should not be hoping today that once Corona will be finished, we can back to our former life. We now have to invest in sustainable technologies and strategies. We cannot afford to get back to the former normal. We really have to prepare ourselves that we will have pandemics on a regular basis in the future. Not only because we are interfering more and more with our nature, but also because we have domestic animals more and more, which can transmit these viruses. So what we are currently experiencing is only a first version. And now we have the unique opportunity to mobilize ourselves to support new technologies and new strategies. Professor Dr. Mosbrugger, yeah, the end of the discussion is near. You have been talking about the number of people who have to change their home, who have to move, who have to be relocated. If now Ursula Leyen would invite you to come to Brussels, what would you tell her? Would you tell her to start thinking about Hamburg, about Seattle, about, I don't know, what are the concrete consequences? I think there are two conclusions. We would have to start thinking about how to adapt. No matter what will be the negotiation regarding CO2 reductions and so on, we would have to start to adapt. And of course, the more we anticipate, the more we act, the less dramatic the impact will be. But I cannot do as of a slight improve in my CO2 emissions will be enough. And the Green Deal tries to tackle the different topics separately. But there has to be interconnection, transversality. Therefore, we are currently taking a systemic approach and not a single topic approach to see what has an impact, a positive impact on the one hand, can have a negative impact for another topic. Mr. Schuster also supported what you've been saying. In order to respect the timing, I would like to close this meeting. I would like to thank Professor Dr. Mosbrugger. I would like to thank Niels Schuster from the European Commission and Michael Bloss, member of the European Parliament. And on Friday, 4th of December, we have an expert panel regarding cyber criminality at European level. Yeah, there will be a new regulation, and our talk on Friday will talk about how to tackle this kind of criminality. We will have Didier Reinders as participant of this debate. So Friday, 4th December from 2 to 3 p.m. Thank you very much to our audience. Thank you very much for your participation in this debate regarding climate crisis and long-term political decision making. Thank you very much. Have a nice day and stay safe.